So for today's lecture, we are going to start with the topic that is distributed component model. So that stands for COM and DCOM as well. So basically, this is again a model which works on the concept of objects where you are going to be having different objects. But here they have divided the objects on the client side and on the server side. So the components or tools or the objects which are executed or which are working on the client side is called as COM, whereas the objects or the components or tools which are working on the server side is called as DCOM. So COM stands for component tools working at the client side and DCOM stands for distributed component tools or objects running at the server side. Please note this same. Okay. So in case of the COM, you require an additional installation where you need to go on the machine from where it is to be executed. So it is just like an interface needs to be installed on the client side and then only the communication or you can say interaction between the client and server can take place. Okay. In case of the DCOM also there is installation is required, but that will be on the some network or it can be on the location where the server is going to initiate with the communication or fulfilling the response. Okay, so basically DCOM is a client server model as we have already seen before. COM is a component tool is working or executed at the client side, and DCOM is distributed component object tool which works on the server side. So it is again something which is related to client server protocol or client server modeling. And basically, this type of model is used over the distributed network in order to communicate with each other or to share the resources, to transfer the resources, and everything will take place on a single machine across the distributed platform. Okay, so your client and server can be remotely located anywhere, but there will be a single machine through which they are going to communicate with each other. Okay, so in DCOM, the client is all DCOM client is going to make the object request for the services which it wants from the server, and this request can be on the different machines because server can have many sub machines or it can be located on different networks. And with this, the server once receive the request, it is going to fulfilling the client request. So you can see over your screen there is a diagrammatic representation where you have your client and you have your server. So COM stands for component tools which are working on the runtime. They are providing security. They are providing a distributed environment. And they are providing a remote procedure call which can be made from the client and server. And there is a protocol stack where multiple protocols are running to provide end-to-end services. Okay. In this, once you're done with the client installation, or you can say clients uh, steps are done, you're going to connect this with a DCOM network that is nothing but a distributed network which is going to connect with the server. Again, the server will have the same steps: COM environment, security provider, DCE, that is a computing environment, RPC, and protocol stack. So both of them will have a same set of installation, or you can say same set of requirements. But only the thing is like here they are going to connect it with a network protocol which is going to be distributed in nature, because your client and server can be remotely located, they can be remotely located, they can be located anywhere. So to provide the services over a common network or a common protocol, they usually use DCOM to do the same. So this is important point here. You have to always remember COM is a set of component tools which are executed at the client side, and DCOM is something which is run on the server side. And this is the network through which the client and server both are going to be connected in real time, though they are remotely located, and they are going to provide the services to each other. So next we are moving to is Java remote call. Okay. So basically, first you have to understand that what do you mean by remote call or remote invocation. Okay. Both of them are same, but they are just different meanings. In other words, you can say, but both of them are same only. So if I talk about Java method invocation or Java method call, it is one and the same. Okay. Basically, again, this is the distributed object model technology where your object are going to be reside into JVM, that is nothing but the Java virtual machines which are there. Okay, and your objects are going to be accessed or they are going to invoke, in other words, for which are running on the another JVM. So basically, it is a remote calls which is going to be done, and this mechanism is going to allow your objects to reside in one system that can be of JVM because it is a Java remote call. and you can access or invoke an object which is running on the another JVM. So here the communication is going to take place between your JVMs, that is the Java virtual machines, where one object will reside in one JVM and it is going to communicate or it is going to invoke with the object which resides in the another JVM. Okay, so this is again a method which is help you to distribute uh, the applications, or you can say services across the network where it can provide it. Okay, so it provides remote communication between the Java program. So whenever you are using a Java as a program to provide the services or to make the call over the network or distributed network or objects, it is usually done and it is referred as Java remote method invocation. So mostly it is already declared into the uh, files which are there, that is your package java.rmi. So here it is already there because this is the library which contains all the communication mechanisms, you can say all the headers, all the functions, all the methods which are there, which is there. Okay, so it is going to do that. So basically rmi is based on the concept of stub and skeleton, which we have already studied before. Okay, so in the stub, if I talk about the stub object, it is something which is there on the client end, okay, or client machine, and it is going to build the information and it is going to send the information to the server. So whatever is the request of the client, in other words, it is going to be done by the stub object, and this information is going to send to the server. So whatever information is being sent, there is usually sent as a blocks of information, so that the server can identify that which block of information is being asked by the server. So an identifier or unique ID is assigned to the every block which is being sent from the client and server. Along with that, there are going to be method names which are going to be invoked as a parameters when it goes or when it accessed by the other objects into the other JVMs. So this is your stub object. Next we have skeleton object, which something which works from the server side. So the skeleton object passes the request from the stub object to the remote object, and basically it is going to use for making the calls, whatever calls client has to make to the server or server has to respond back to the client. So all the calls are going to be done here. Any parameters which are being sent from the client to server are going to be deparameterize, you can say, or unmarshalling is going to take place, and the request is going to be fulfilled. So you can see over your screen there is a diagrammatic representation. You have your client and you have your server. Client is always going to make a method calls, and the language, you can say, which is going to use for doing the method calls is going to be Java. Okay, that is why it is Java remote method invocation. Server are going to be remote objects. There are going to be multiple servers which are going to be distributed in nature. Okay, the communication between client and server is done with the concept of stub and skeleton. Okay, stub which works on the client machine, it takes the request from the client, it adds an identifier to it, then it sends over the internet. Through the internet, it reaches to the server. Server usually initiate this, or you can say fulfill this with the help of the skeleton. So whatever is the request which is received from the stub end will be fulfilled by the remote object or the server or the skeleton. So these are the three names. So don't forget, these three names are used for this: server or remote objects or skeleton. And whatever is the request which has been received from the stub or the client will be fulfilled by the server. So here all the parameters which are there are going to be unmarshaled, they are going to be checked, and then the request will be fulfilled from the server or skeleton to the client. So the next we have is .NET remoting. Okay. So if I talk about remoting, basically this is helping you to do the remote communication between your client and server. As we are studying about distributed object framework, so everything is going to be here around the concept that your client and server can be remotely located, and how the applications and the communications are going to be take place between your client and server. So again, in .NET remoting, here you're going to allow IPC, that is inter-process communication between your client and server. And this services will be of type like .NET applications can be run remotely on the client and server, and they can fulfill each other's request. So basically, .NET remoting will give the developers, like they will give a common platform through which the remote objects that can be of client type or that can be a server type, they can communicate with each other with the help of that applications, and they can get their request and response fulfilled. So if I talk about distributed object technology, this remoting is something which is lot gives you a lot of flexibility, you can say, and there is a lot of customization on the developer's end. Okay, because the transport protocols which you are using for communicating or for sharing the information between your proxy and remote object. Proxy is nothing but again a client, and the remote object is nothing but your server. Okay, so all the encoding of the data, all the lifetime of the objects, everything is going to be managed by the developer. So it gives you a lot of flexibility as per your requirement, as per your need. You can enhance it, or either you can, do the changes, but in a better way so that the communication can be seamless between your client and server. So .NET remoting here simply refers that you're going to provide remote services over the network between your client and server, and there are many applications which will be running over this client and server, and you're going to provide the request and response. So if I talk about next topic, that is service oriented computing, the first we need to first understand that what do you mean by service. Okay. So whenever we talk about service, in case of your software component, it is nothing but functionalities which you're going to give, facilities which you're going to give. Okay. And basically here the concept which you're going to use is object oriented concept. Always remember your distributed computing or distributed architecture always works on the concept of object oriented, as it is an extension of it. So here, whatever you're going to have functionalities, whatever services you're going to have, it can be reused again. Okay, it's not like that once you have given one services, then you're going to eliminate that and you're not going to reuse. You can reuse the services because there are remote clients, you have your remote servers, so easily you can do this concept of reusability there. Okay, so you can add many complex applications, you can give a lot of services as per the customer requirements. So in general, if I talk about service, you can see the definition over the screen. Abstraction that encompasses several different implementations using different technologies and protocols. So whenever you talk about service, it's not like that you have to just give only one implementation or one methodology to give the service. You can use n number of implementations. You can use different technologies which are available. You can use different protocols or transport platforms to give the services. The choice is yours, because now if I talk about service, it is have become a lot of very easy to provide, and there are many protocols which are there and which will help you to do the same. So the choice is now vast for you. It is not limited in nature, so you can give a lot of choices as per your requirement. Okay, so in distributed, we usually use distributed implementation techniques because we have or we are dealing with remote clients or remote servers. So we always go for a distributed services or applications which are running distributed. So if I talk about service just in very simple words, I'll conclude because we move to the next topic. So service is nothing but whatever functionalities you're going to provide, okay, whatever value added services you're going to give, you're going to make sure that all the applications are seamlessly going to run. You're going to provide some services or some, you can say, benefits that is usually referred as services. So next, when we talk about service-oriented computing, okay, so it simply refers that all your distributed systems, how they are going to provide services, how they are going to build the systems, how they are going to integrate different applications, different software systems, okay, how they are going to coordinate this all your applications and software system within a service oriented architecture. This is an SOA where all your services which you're going to provide are going to be mentioned here, or you can say it is going to be specified here at what level, how the services is going to be provided, the management is going to be done here. So that is your SOA, that is service oriented architecture. So in service oriented computing, you have to be very much clear that as a distributed system, what services you can give, how you are going to represent it, how you are going to build that services, what type of applications and software systems you are going to use to build that services, and all of this needs to be specified or needs to be coordinated within your service oriented architecture. This is an architecture which lets you know or which helps you to design your services to be provided across the distributed platforms. So what is SOA? That is service oriented architecture. Okay. Basically, it is an architectural style which will tell you that how you have to orient your services, or you can say how you have to design your services. Okay. Because if you're talking about giving any services, first you need to design that services, you need to organize it, You have to understand that what softwares are going to be used for giving that services, how they are going to interact with each other, how the communication will take place. Then you have to design some set of protocols, you can say principles, that will actually help you to know that this protocols, if you are using with this, what are the commonality between them, what are the things you need to take care while integrating. That can be either, integration can be either in a coherent system there, wherein you will have just complete control over the system, or you can have a decentralized system where you can have no control, you are just going to do it in this way, in a haphazard way. Okay, so basically service oriented architecture is very much important, because here you're going to understand that what services you're going to do, how they are going to work, what platform you're going to use, what are the software systems you're going to use. You're going to understand in much better way how you're going to integrate them with other systems, and while integrating, what are the design principles you need to take care of, what are the shortcomings which are there you need to take care of. So everything has to be there. So all the design principles which are there available for providing the services will be already designed, or you can say it will be already mentioned in your SOA. So basically, SOA will provide computing packages that will help you to give interoperable services. Okay, even if your client and server are running different operating systems, but there will be some applications, there will be some software which will help you to solve the problem, and this everything is going to be already mentioned or specified. You can see in SOA, which will be already there. Okay, so you can integrate them with other software systems, or you can provide different services as well. Okay, so that is your service oriented architecture. So whenever you're providing a services, or whenever you're using service oriented computing, the very first thing you need to do is you have to refer SOA, because it will give you each and everything detail, that what it has, what are the services you're going to provide, how you're going to provide, what are the software options which are available to provide the same. So everything will be there. So the two major roles within the SOA is the service provider and the service consumer. Because one who is giving the service, that also needs to be mentioned here, that what services they are going to provide, what are the platforms they are going to use, what are the softwares they are going to use to provide the services. And second is the service consumer, who is going to get the service. Okay, so also needs to be, play a major role here, because he is getting the services. He knows that these functionalities were available to them, this operating system was available, this complexity has been resolved with the service provider. So here there are two people important. One is going to give the service, and another is the one who is going to take the service. That is, everything will be defined in the SOA in terms of the service provider and the service. So if we talk about cloud service provider, basically he's the one who is going to take care of the services, he's the one who is going to make the service available for you as per the consumer requirements. Okay, he is going to advertise the services. Okay, he can publish the services into registry, that is nothing but your RMI registry mostly. Okay, he can give a service contract that will specify that what is going to be your nature for service, like how many years you are going to use that services, how to use that services, you are going to be give some credentials. Okay, what are the basic requirements for that services to be run over your devices. Okay, and the fees to be charged. So in short, I can say here, this is something is nothing but a service provider who is going to give your services over the network. Okay. Next is the service consumer. He is going to get the services. He is going to refer the metadata, because the registry is going to be maintained where all the details will be there for the clients. Okay, where which service they have provided, how they have provided. Okay, so the client components which are there, they are going to use these services, they are going to give the feedback for that services, they will identify the different business domain which are there, they are going to identify that as well. Okay, so consumer are going to use the services which is given by the cloud provider. Okay, it is going to check for the components which are being used to be used with the services, and it can the consumers and the providers which are there, both can belong to different organization bodies, or they can belong to different business domains. So that is all about your service provider and service consumer, which is the part of your service oriented computing, which is already mentioned in your service oriented architecture. So in the next lecture, we are going to start with our chapter number 3, that is virtualization. Okay, so that's it for the day. Thank you, everyone.